heat your house too, if it, in wintertime. So you got to be prepared for this stuff. Most people are not prepared at all. Most people don't even have food in their cupboards probably for more than 3-4 days, let alone they don't have a backup power supply. They don't, everybody's living on the grid. They should be actually, where they have some power capability of solar power and other means to, at least survive if something ever happened. That's what scares me so much. We're not prepared for anything. And people aren't thinking about that. And that's, again, I get back this president of us, who I voted for, but when they bring up the thing about fixing the grid, to fix the grid in our country would be less than what he wants for the wall. So if we got hit with a flare, we're not going to lose our power. It's crazy. It's just like our agenda is so wrong in this country and probably all over the world. They're not focusing on what we should be focusing on, be it our own population or what is going on, like with UFOs, not disclosing. The longer the government keeps their mouth shut, and it's like a game. Have you ever noticed this? Seriously, Robert, it's a game right now. Going back over a year ago, or even, was it 4 years ago with the Nimitz, that all of a sudden started circulating the video of the UFO encounter with the two pilots. And then right after that came out and started circulating on the news, the Secretary of the Air Force saying our next war, and he's saying this to the graduating cadets, won't be a ground war. It'll be a war in outer space. Followed up by a month after that, our president says, hey, we need to create a space force. I mean, it's just like they're giving out little bit of information here and here, but then as soon as they do this, then you got all these other people out here that are, and I don't blame them, but then all of a sudden they start thinking in their head, well, this is happening, and then you know what? It isn't, like I said earlier, there isn't a day I don't get pictures of UFOs. A day doesn't get by where somebody tells me that they had encounters, or they imagine they had encounters. And the other thing, the people trying to get rich off of selling books on UFOs and Bigfoot and stuff like this, it makes me sick, because it's not a day you don't go on Facebook and somebody just came out with a new book on UFOs.
Mm-hmm. Well, it becomes a job for people, right? I mean, I used to find that when I used to do a lot of research with books, I remember one time I used to have quite a large library, and I was going through it, and I found that I had this one moment where I had all these books stacked on edge, and I was looking at all the titles and filtering through them and what ones I'm going to keep and what and it was mostly UFOs, conspiracy, paranormal, psychic stuff, all those sort of intangible subjects. And I kind of realized, because, I'm doing it all for myself, to like a search for truth and answers and, again, that unified theory kind of thing. And I realized, wow, a lot of people write books for a living. And so it's not necessarily that they created this book because had this great truth, or they had to do it, or it's going to make this great, but they had to pay bills, and that's the way they do it, is by writing books, So it's the same thing today. Some people, make a living writing UFO books or doing a lecture circuit or something. But I'm not taking away from that. We all, got to make a living, but it's when money becomes the issue, not truth. You know what I mean? It's like any sort of corruption. It's when you start, well, I'll start saying this, even though I don't really feel that. That's what people want to hear, and I can make, I can get more money doing it that way. So that's where the corruption thing kicks in, as opposed to, purely trying to find truth. And that's why I've, sort of taken so long at doing it and haven't really gone public with it, because I really, honestly didn't want to be that person early in the 90s or the mid-90s to say, oh, it's like this, and these beings from this planet are attacking these beings, and this is happening here. And let's assume that maybe that could be happening, but I didn't want to suddenly feel later on where it's just like, wow, I kind of got used. I kind of got I'm putting out, some narrative or something, that I kind of believe, and I don't really, know. You know, so I'm more interested from an artistic point of view of things like, you know, truth and beauty, you know. So for me, I had that motivation to like really be critical of things, to in many ways be very accepting of things too. Like I said, that idea of believing nothing and believing everything. You sort of are very accepting of everything when it comes in, but then you have to start piecing it together and seeing if it fits in with, you know, those other points that you think are important, and trying to build something. And then sometimes, like anything, something will come along and, you know, dispel something else. Like one of the great researchers that I read early on that I really found interesting was Charles Fort. And he just went around, and he's one of the early guys for UFOs, too. He talked about the weird airships and all kinds of lights. So this idea that it happened in Roswell, it's like, no, Charles Fort, he documented all kinds of stuff, even in the 1800s. There was a huge wave of very bizarre airships that showed up in America in the late 1800s, and he documented all kinds of strange lights in the 1910s and 20s. And he had an interesting couple of quotes about UFOs. He said one that ties into what we were talking earlier, and John Keel was big on this, and a couple of other researchers, was the idea that we are property. That a long time ago, you know, we could come and go and beings came and go, but at some point, something or someone gained possession of this place. So that's what he came to, one of his ideas. And the other thing that Charles Fort spoke about was sort of the egos of scientists and how they could boast that, oh, the moon is this or far away, and then they would say this, well, not so much the moon, but like this planet or this star, and then they would change it in the early days and stuff. And he was like, it's almost like they could say anything they wanted, and there's no real proof to it. You know, it's like, you know, the guys in white coats and ivory towers dictating what reality is. And he documented all these strange things that just, in the scientists' points of view, should never have really happened and were kind of brushed under the table. And these are things that he collected in the British Museum, and prior to that, he was in the library in New York, the main library in New York, and he just documented all these things that, you know, were oddities in the world. And he wrote, I think there was 4 books in the Charles Fort series, but I highly recommend them. They're old. It's like, if we think that this stuff is new, this stuff's been going on for a long time. There's been all kinds of things, like even from a shamanic point of view, like, you know, thousands of years ago, like, you know, contact with beings and rock carvings. The Southwest is full of all kinds of interesting drawings that have been made that we would think perhaps are, you know, alien beings or some kind of like spirit being or something like that. So this stuff has been going on for a long time. It's not like suddenly this disclosure is going to come out and they're going to be like, oh, there you go, answers. Like I was saying earlier, I felt in my research, it's like, you know, oh, there we go. They came out, they said, oh yeah, there we go. There's 47 beings. They all look like this. End of story. You know?
Oh, like
it's not going to happen.
Like I said,
it's kind of distraction more than anything.
Yeah, well, you know, I've been in broadcasting a long time, and I've heard this disclosure thing all the time, you know, being into it. And so far, nobody has really dropped any of the flaming exposure, you know, disclosure that they claim they have. And, you know, again, I don't know. I don't know. I get so frustrated with it.
But there's been a lot of personal experiences by people and a lot of things that have happened outside of that. I mean, it doesn't... So the one thing that I have a little iffiness with is the military is so good at like psychological warfare and disinformation and stuff like that, that it's really hard to trust things that come out of the military. I'd rather listen to somebody that had a personal experience, you know, like you just told me about. That's what I'm interested in, because that's something that happened to somebody. I don't really find it interesting if some general or somebody... Now, I did look into it, and I found some of their... You know, I don't discredit these people, of course. You know, they're genuine. but I don't think that's where the answers are at. I think it has more to do with, how this relates to you as an individual and what's this going to, that's where I think of things like consciousness and that, and developing yourself and, becoming more of an individual, not, looking outside of yourself and thinking that, if this guy says something, then, I can attach myself to it. It's like there's a lot of stuff that people can learn through themselves,
Well, what gets me is like these people, right? They get these papers, like government papers, it says top secret, and it lists people's names and it lists all this stuff on it. You realize back Nazi Germany was so good at propaganda, brainwashing the civilians, and we learned a lot from them, how they did it. And I got a funny feeling a lot of this stuff you see on, like top secret this on UFOs and top secret off on this and this and this. A lot of it, they're not stupid. They leak that stuff out, and it's all propaganda.
Yeah, no, there's no mistakes like that, really. Like, I mean, people, I don't know.
But I know how the government works. I know how the government.
There is a big UFO community where that has happened, where they've used people. Like, that's what I was saying earlier, where I didn't want to be that person, where it was like, oh, great, now I'm getting this information, I'm getting these secret documents, and I'm going and doing these talks, and I'm doing it. And then I find out, it was all a big ruse, you know what I mean? I was like being used or something. So that's why I never really got into the whole UFO thing, like in the sense of going on the speaking circuit and things like that. Now I'm older and I don't really have a problem with it. And, I'll probably be doing some more with promoting my artwork and doing some shows and talking along the lines of what I've spoken with you about tonight, because it all ties in. And for me, I find it a very fascinating subject. And it's kind of like, about life, it's like, the human condition, life on planet Earth, what's it about? That's, a great thing again about being an artist. You kind of want to figure out this whole human condition thing and why we do the things we do to each other, and how can we better our lives and that, as opposed to control.
Well, it all comes down to this. People have to open up their eyes and realize we're not the only creatures in the universe or any other universe. Or maybe not even on this planet. No, we don't know. I mean, it's not a week doesn't go by. We find some new species of creature out of the ocean, or that some creature out in the jungles, or what have you, or some insect that they thought was, didn't even exist for the last million years. We don't know, but we got to keep our eyes open. And I tell you this: if somebody out there thinks the world is flat, or that we're living on a integrated circuit chip, then I feel sorry for them. Okay, because the world is not flat, and I don't think we're living in a civilization of a computer game. I can say that, yes, that I do think we're not the only creatures walking on this earth. I mean, if you think that, then, go, that's happy. I'm happy for you. But you know what? In reality is, you have to have your eyes open, your ears open, and when you do see something that you can't account for, hey, was it what I saw? Was it a UFO or was it something else? I have no idea. But long as I couldn't identify what it was, to me, it was a UFO. Now, I will say this here because our time is running up. I also had a police sergeant that was just about ready to retire out of Oregon, one of the biggest cities in Oregon. Him and his wife last summer, went out camping around Tillamook area. And he claims that he saw aliens on the ground in the woods. And they noticed him, and he turned around for a second to alert his wife, and poof, they were gone. But it was really funny that at the same time, Peter Davenport, who runs the UFO Reporting Center, came on our show, and he also was getting sightings of aliens on the ground. So I don't know if something is going on. I don't know if this whole rouge in our country, we're at the wall, what's going on in our Congress and our Senate is to keep people's minds off of other things. Are we going to be invaded? Who knows? I mean, you know what? I mean,